Hi, and welcome to the Tameshigeri walkthrough of 22 cutting techniques, part 1. I'm doing this video in the spirit of camaraderie and shared purpose to exchange knowledge with you so we can improve Tameshigeri for everyone. Keep in mind that some styles may call these techniques differently and not perform them the same. But together we can inspire the next generation of practitioners to facilitate the art for years to come. Let's get started. Here you have the first 4 cutting techniques, beginning with double kesagiri. Left and right kesa. Now let's watch the first individual. Okay, that was left and now right. And she'll step back. All right, let's watch it in slow motion and stop right there. Let's go back. Let's watch what happened. All right. So, successful cut, so very good, but let's fix this a little bit. So you can see that the cut went down but stopped right there. Ideally, you would have the energy of the sword continue. Instead of stopping right there, the momentum of the sword will continue all the way down to at least the knee level. You want that momentum to travel all the way through and down and not stop the momentum there. Okay, so let's continue to the next cut. So he switches legs forward and cuts. Boom, not bad. Now let's see what happens. The line of her cut is good. You can see it follows the line of the sword. The only issue is that there's a little scoop here. Let's go back to the drawing. There's a little scoop right here, and that scoop is called shakuri. Shakuri is a scalloped cut. And that scallop cut happened, if you'll note here, let's go back just a second here. You'll notice there's a little bounce, boom, right there. And that bounced is what caused the scallop cut. But it was a successful cut and all around pretty good. Sandan giri, 3 cuts, hidari kesa, switch feet, migi kesa, and gyaku kesa. He does the first kesa, second kesa, and gyaku. Steps back. Okay, let's watch the slow motion. She does her first kesa. Ideally be closer to a 45-degree angle, but not bad. Second angle much better. Let's watch her gyaku. All right, let's stop right there. You can see that her arm positioning in her kesa, the angle is good here. But her arm positioning ideally would remain straight as she goes through, so that her hand is somewhere in this position and the sword is in this position. So everything remains in one straight line as she's going through, so the energy continues straight. The fall of the wara is in a nice position because it is falling straight down. If you find that the wara is falling over to the side, to far left or right, means that the blade angle, the hasuji, is off. So it means you slapped the wara off the tatami, which means your blade angle was wrong, and that's why it flies off. But if the tatami just drops down within the distance of the stand, it was a good cut. A nice solid straight line through the tatami. So once again, you want your line to be nice and straight as you're cutting through the tatami. The line of your shoulder, your arm, and the sword to be one straight line as you're cutting through. Continue that kinetic energy straight through. Don't have this bend. Okay, let's continue. But all around successful cutting. Okay, yondan giri, 4 cuts composed of hidari kesa, switching your feet, migi kesa, gyaku kesa, and suihei. All right, let's look at his gyaku. Nice 45-degree cut, and his suihei. All right, let's look at those cuts here in slow motion. All right, let's look at that first cut. All right, let's go to the drawing board here. All right, so you can see his kesa does follow a straight line to his gedan, to his knee here. Knee area, not bad. But let's talk about his shoulder here, which is being pulled in by his elbow on his other arm, which is bent. So ideally, these 2 arms are going to form a straight V, which is then going to lead to the sword being in a straight line. So right now, that arm is pulling that shoulder forward. So his kata is off, his hips are in a different line, and his ears are in a different line. So this is called a tatesen. His tatesen is the line between his mimi, his kata, and his koshi. So ideally you want to have those three areas in one straight line, particularly when you're cutting shomen in front. When you're turning, it's going to be your kata and your koshi are going to be in one straight line, because your face is going to be facing the tatami, and you have to look towards where you're cutting. But when you're facing shomen, you really want everything in one straight line facing forward. Remember that good cutting equals good posture. But he did complete a nice cut, so all around not bad. As he moves up in rank, that will get better. Let's move on to his second cut. Okay, not a bad angle, very nice. His gyaku. Gyaku is good, but let's look at that sword again. So again, this is a learning lesson. So his angle is good. Overall angle is good, and the tatami is falling basically straight down. But you want this sword energy to continue straight out. So right now he's wrapping the sword. So the sword energy is going in this direction like a baseball bat. You want your arms to continue and end in this direction with the sword over here. Okay? You'll see some examples of that as we move forward. And his suihei, which is at a good angle. And let's talk about this real quick. So this right here, you see a little hanger here, and that's called kuwano koshi. And kuwano koshi is just the outer layer of skin of the tatami that sticks out. It doesn't really count in this example, because this is just practice cutting, but in an examination or in competition, it may count against you if your opponent who cut the same as you doesn't have one. You do have a little bit of the rolling of the sword here, okay? The sword is rolling and not staying on the parallel. So ideally, that would not happen. So as he's cutting through, you should have a little bit more of a hip rotation. So the hip should be pointing more in this direction, and the sword should be parallel to the ground, having the same angle as the tatami as he wraps around as a matter of practice, okay? But the angle is okay, and he's a Q at this point, so he's doing fine. Good job overall. Okay, let's have a quick lesson on Yama, since we're not going to have a video example of it. All right, so let's imagine your tatami is here, and you've cut it the first time in this direction. Your second cut is right here in the direction of this arrow. So your Yama is this little piece of section that's been cut through. So a better example here, a clearer example, would be this large Yama here. Okay, so Yama is called mountain cut, the cut that has passed through a previous cut. The reason why it's called a Yama is because the tatami on its profile looks like a mountain. Okay. All right, so let's move on to shakuri, a scalloped cut. So there was a first example on the video of the shakuri. So shakuri could happen for a number of reasons. Either the blade bounced through the tatami, the blade could have turned while cutting, the body could have turned while cutting. Any number of reasons why this happened. But either way, it's called a shakuri. Kawano koshi, it's the outer layer of tatami that extends above the cut. You saw an example of that before. The Kawano koshi could be on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, depending on the direction of the blade that's cutting. All right, let's move on. Okay, Godangiri, 5 cuts. Starting with Keisa, switches feet, Keisa, again Keisa, Gyaku, and then Suihei. Nice flat Suihei, very good. Now let's examine. First Keisa, very good, nice angle. switch his feet forward. Then it goes to the second keisa. Very nice angle. These are Japanese wara, so they're very hard, and you'll see it in his gyaku. He really needs to hit it hard. There's a little bit of over rotation there, but he does a good job at his angles. And again, as we talked before, his angle of his sword is maintained the same angle of his suihei consistently throughout his cutting. So this is a good example and very nice. And he continues his wrap. Okay, here we go with intermediate tameshigiri. Cuts 5 through 8. The first one being rokudan giri, 6 cuts. The important thing about rokudan giri is that you space out the 6 cuts equally on the tatami. Ideally between 40 and 50 degrees. You really want it at 45 degrees. And that you don't hit the peg on suihei. It's called shimbo. Alright, so let's talk about his cutting. Alright, you have a little bit of a hanger there on the first cut. And let's look at his second cut. Let's stop right there. So if we look at his cut, let's examine the angle. So looking at this angle, it's very good, and you can see the energy of the cut continues straight down. It starts here at jodan, continues straight down through gedan, and his sword is generally at knee height. All right, the angle doesn't stop here, and the momentum doesn't stop here, right? That kinetic energy continues all the way straight down, just like in our saburi exercises, continues straight down. Very good. Let's continue on. Let's look at his next keisa. Good is gyaku. All right, very good example again. Started from this gedan position, going straight up into his gyaku. And you can see his arm position and sword position all in a straight line. That kinetic energy is going out. It's not going around. And there's a reason for that. Later on, you'll see another member cutting in which he'll have to return the sword very quickly in this position because it is timed. So you really don't want to extend your arms past this position. The angle is good, and you can see the tatami is falling straight down. Very good. Let's move on. His next keisa. And now his suihei. Okay, let's stop right there. You can see here that his suihei is flat, and the angle of his sword continues on that flat trajectory. So most of the time you will see that the beginning kenshi will turn the blade vertically along the angle of the body. So they have a tendency to flatten out the sword as they do their suihei. So you want to maintain consistency in your angle as you go as a matter of practice. So your blade angle, your hasuji, should maintain ideally equal as you're going across your cut. So far so good. And then he does his wrap and chiburi and noto. Okay, here we have Tsubame Gaishi returning swallow cut, hidari keisa, followed by gyaku keisa. The important thing here is the 1-2, 1-2 tempo of the cut. All right, let's look at it in slow motion. So the important thing here, it's a non-stop cut. Unlike when you're doing rokudan giri, you have to stop in between all the cuts. Here, the tempo is much quicker. You do have to be mindful of the angles of the cut, but as your cuts get more elaborate, the angles don't matter as much as the completion of the cut. All right, moving on to inazuma giri, lightning cut. Here, very important that when you make your cuts, it has to be, all 3 cuts have to be within 1 second. And as you can see, let's back up a little bit. When he makes his first cut, before the first tatami hits the ground, his second tatami was cut. Let's look at that again. It's very quick. It's very quick. 1, 2, second cut, third cut, see? And then he made the third cut before the second tatami hit the ground. That's why it's called lightning cut, inazuma. Makuri, sweeping cut. This he's making an X and he's starting from haso. Okay, haso no kamai, which means the Suba starts at the ear position. All right, and he's going to make a big exposition cut. Okay, watch it in slow motion. Boom, boom. Let's stop it right here. So you're going to see he comes in, makes a sweeping X. Shoop. Watch again in slow motion. Let's take that out. Let's back up just a little bit. No, not there. All right, let's back up a little bit. Boom, boom. And you can see he cut both of them before they even hit the ground. Very quick, very decisive. Very good. Be sure to watch the other half of the cutting videos, Intermediate 2 and Advanced. If you need PDF copies of the cutting diagrams, send me an email at floridabudokan.org.